Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. This is episode 34 featuring Leslie Poole. Show notes, links, conversation, and more at sportsmastery.com/34. You know, the last time we were talking, you were telling me a story. You were showing me the book by Ryan Holiday. Could you tell me the title again and then share that story with us?
The book is The Obstacle is the Way. And the story that he's telling is about a guy, a king. And in his kingdom, everyone's living very well. People are profitable, business is good. And he feels that everyone in the kingdom has become very entitled. So he wants to test him. So he has this large boulder placed right in the middle of the road going out of town. And then he goes in the woods nearby so he can watch. And people come up to the boulder and they push on it and they get frustrated and they curse the king and they yell and they stomp and they go home and then give up. And he keeps watching, and eventually he sees this peddler approaching from the other side, from another town. He's coming in. And he sees the peddler lean into the rock, pushes on the rock, tries to lift the rock, can't move the rock, and he sees him looking at it. And then the peddler walks into the wood. And he comes back, and in the book he says that he comes back with something he could use as a lever. So I'm picturing he comes back with a big stick. And he pries it under the rock, and he wedges the rock out of the way. He uses the stick as a lever, rolls the rock out of the way, and underneath the rock is some gold and a letter from the king saying that he's done a great job and the obstacle is the way. So it was the reward for putting in the work and finding a solution rather than giving up.
So I know you work with softball athletes. You often see me here at the Portland Athletic Center of Excellence, working with baseball, football, basketball, track and field athletes. I know you were a Division I pitcher at the University of Tennessee and later at the University of Fresno. How do you relate or share that story with your athletes?
Well, a lot of athletes will be in a position where they're maybe not getting the playing time they want. Maybe they're the number 2 pitcher, or they didn't make varsity and they feel they should have. Maybe they are better than the kid that made varsity, but that's their obstacle. They didn't get what they wanted. And in reality, if you didn't make varsity and you wanted to, now you have an opportunity to be on JV and set records. And if you're the number 2 pitcher, you have the opportunity that you're staying under the radar and you are super motivated now. So you can really dig into your own experience and your own training and not be worried about what's going on around you. The point of the story is that it's all perspective. Is the rock an obstacle that's going to prevent you from getting where you want to go? Or is it an opportunity to maybe get some gold underneath that rock? So are you going to do the work or are you going to give up?
You know, I agree with that 100%. I run into kids all the time that blame, complain, and defend a situation that they shouldn't be in the first place if they just did the work on a day in and day out basis. Or they wonder why they find themselves second or third on the depth chart or on JV. The obstacle is the way. And part of that obstacle is just doing the work on a day-to-day basis. What are you focused on? Why do you do what you do? What are your goals? Explain that to me. Have you had a chance to write that down? And if you've also had a chance to write that down, what action steps are you taking to reach that place that where you would like to be or as far as that path?
I don't know if this will totally answer your question, but when I talk about goals, I only talk about setting a single goal. You only ever can have one goal. You imagine how many hours in a day you have, and you take off for sleep and certain other things that need to get done. Say you've got 12 hours a day that you can do what you need to do to pursue your goal. Are you going to divide those 12 hours between 2 goals or 3? So do you want to make varsity? Do you want to have the most whatever stat, some kind of catch or some kind of like strikeout statistic or whatever. And you also want to get a 4.0. If you only want to get a 4.0, then 100% of your resources can be poured into that. If you only want to get 60 miles an hour on your fastball, all of your resources can pour into that. If you want to do both, it's double the work. And are you capable of doing the double the work? Some people 4.0 isn't hard. Some people 60 miles an hour isn't hard. All these things, there's people that are so elite at these things, so gifted, so hardworking, so well coached, whatever, that this goal is not hard for them. So hopefully that athlete is not setting that specific goal. If you can do more than one thing, then maybe you haven't set the bar high enough. But I recommend setting one goal and being obsessed with it. If you are a generalist, you can be pretty good at a lot of things. If you are a specialist, you have to be the best you can be at one thing.
You know what? I like that, and I can appreciate that. I'm working with a quarterback right now, and he's an individual that decided to play basketball. He also decided this spring to play baseball and run track at the same time. You know, the track was supposed to be put together in a way to develop speed at the quarterback position, and he also does strength training. He finally got to the point where he realized that he couldn't manage both track and field and baseball in the same season. So he's been playing T-ball since he was 7. So he gave up track. I can appreciate that because he's starting to see what's most important to me now. What am I doing? And he realized that he couldn't do 2 sports, train, and also do homework or his academic work at the same time. So as Coach Poole was saying, you have to know what's most important to you right now, and you have to narrow that goal down to one.
Something else I would add is that everything you do is going to take you closer to or keep you further from your goal. So if you want to be the best quarterback in the state and you decide to also play basketball, then all these hours you spent playing basketball are hours that you spent training for endurance and for a flick of the wrist and a chest pass. Those were not opportunities that you had to train on explosive movements like throwing. Everything in football is very explosive. If you're a pitcher and you also want to be a swimmer, you're going to lose speed. You will lose speed. You may be in better shape. You may be more athletic. You may have lost weight. You may have more endurance, but you will lose speed. If you don't lose speed, when you're doing endurance sports and you do not lose speed, then you're just not working hard enough when you're training your speed. But if you have all these different goals to be on these 4 different teams or 3 different teams, you're going to be doing something that is counterproductive in at least one of those.
You know, I agree. I'm not saying don't be a multi-sport athlete. That's the last thing I would tell you to do. I want you to be a multi-sport athlete. But what's most important is these sports have to go together. Football, track, they go together. Basketball, track and field, depending on the event that you might do, they go together when you look at the sprinting events and the jumping events. Now, what I'm saying is if you know you're going to college and your goal is to go to college and play football, we need to be prepping for track and field in the spring by doing weightlifting throughout those months of basketball and also doing your quarterback training, because you have to remember the 10,000 hour rule. All those hours that you put into basketball practice and basketball games, that could be going to your quarterback development. That could be going to whatever position that you play, skill development, strength training, and sprint training, or whatever it is that you do in your sport, you can be enhancing yourself. But if you're playing another sport that's counterintuitive to you building muscle mass and strength and power, then we need to re-examine what some of your goals really are.
I would agree with that. The secondary or tertiary sports should be sports that are complementary to your training and development. So like you said, track and basketball could go together. Track and football could also go together depending on what your track events are. For something like baseball, softball, football, golf, those are all complementary. And golf might seem like an unlikely one, but that's a very violent move. That is 1 single rep max, just like throwing, just like kicking, just like jumping. So I think that is a great complementary sport.
You know, Leslie, I know you work with softball pitchers. Tell me about some of the strategies and systems that you use or things that you say or communicate with your pitchers to develop mental toughness.
Part of developing mental toughness, I think, is knowing what the plan is and staying with it. That does not mean if something doesn't work that you keep going. You still have to be smart about the way you're training. But you have to persist. You have to come up with a good plan, or you have to have good resources to help you figure out what that is, and you have to keep going. If you just want to throw strikes, you can do that next week. You can go from never having pitched a day in your life, a week later to you can throw a strike. Absolutely. Are your mechanics any good? Probably not. Is your speed any good? Probably not. Something that I impress upon pitchers that I am training and families that I am working with is that there are 3 priorities that I will base all of the lessons on, all the coaching, all the advice. The first priority is safe mechanics. The safe mechanics I am going to just say, like, let's assume they are based on Sherry Werner's case study of over 3,000 pitchers. Because it's the only body of work of its kind, we'll say that that's the benchmark for what is safety. That defines safe mechanics or safest mechanics. So number one is safety. When your mechanics are safe, and I'm not talking about perfect, I'm talking about safe, because there's always room for error. There's no such thing as perfect 10 out of 10 out of 10 for pitching. But when your mechanics are safe, then you start going as fast as you can. You start emphasizing speed and intensity. It will not be perfect. It will not be as good at full speed. If you look as good warming up as you do at full speed, then full speed isn't really full speed. So first step is throwing with safe mechanics. Second step is throwing full speed. The third step, or the third priority, is control. And I talk to pitchers about control maybe a couple times a year, and that's usually in season or right before the season when there's kind of like some fine tuning going on. But it's very rare that we talk about control. And that's pitchers that I've been working with for 4, 5, 6 years. Those are people that are very proficient. Because if you're throwing with great mechanics all the time, and your mechanics are very consistent, and you're throwing full speed all the time, so little is changing from pitch to pitch that you no longer have to worry about control because it's the same each time. But if you're not focused on your mechanics and they fluctuate a lot, or you're not thinking about your speed and it fluctuates a lot, then your control is off too. So that's the series of steps, or that's the priorities that I base everything off of. Staying with those priorities demands mental toughness. We do not indulge in the desire to focus on strikes. The team coach, the umpire, the catcher, the parents, everybody else is worried about strikes. If we succumb to that, if we falter under that pressure, then we've sacrificed the quality of our training. So I would say that right there sets the tone for discipline. I also talk to everyone pretty clearly in the beginning about what the expectation is in terms of commitment. I tell them what my level of commitment was and what my career was like. And if they're not ready for that, then I tell them they're not ready for me. And that comes off as real harsh, and that's okay. It's the most honest way I can help them figure out if this is right for them. Because it is tough. It should be tough. Pitching is a complicated skill.
Listen to me if you're out there. Technique and having good form is discipline. Having good form and technique is discipline. I've had people come into my gym. They might have been working out with their other school with a so-called strength and conditioning coach or personal trainer or some teacher that's doing the strength and conditioning. And they might come in and tell me that they can squat 400 pounds, or I see a video of them squatting 400 pounds on Instagram or Twitter. But what I'm seeing is a spine that's rounded, valgus knees, and then the cervical looking up at the ceiling. Now, when I see something like that, everybody knows that over here at ProForce Athletics, my program is built around form and technique when it comes to power lifts and the Olympic lifting that we do here. So I could get the same athlete. They come over here, they're starting with probably their own body weight and then a PVC pipe and then a 15-pound training bar. And then we'll do some work with a 45-pound training bar. Some kids don't like that. Some kids feel that they could be doing more, or I'm wasting their time. Those are the kids that I shoo away, or I just tell them to leave because they're a distraction. And what I'm looking for is form and technique. I'm not trying to drive numbers. It's not about numbers. You can figure the numbers part out when you get to college. My goal is to get you to college to where you have a firm understanding of all the powerlifting and all the Olympic lifting and all the single leg movements that you're most likely going to encounter, that by the time you get there, the only thing that you're going to learn new is some different mobility and flexibility techniques.
I have seen your guys and your women that you train where they're working with body weight or they're working with a PVC pipe and they look terrible. And then I see them a couple weeks later and they look pretty good. And then all of a sudden, I can't believe how much weight they're moving. And that is such a great example for why the technique matters. Barbell movements, throwing movements, those are so complicated. And if you invest in the mechanics, all of a sudden you rocket forward with this progress. And then you improve it a little more, and then you jump again. You refine and you improve. You refine and you improve. So it's constant. I've seen the same thing with the pitching mechanics, where all of a sudden somebody's mechanics just kind of settle in and they look real good. And then the speed comes, and then we plateau it, and then the mechanics get a little bit better. and then the speed comes again. The mechanics are constant. You have to be vigilant constantly, because if you come in tired one day, overtrained one day, whatever, your mechanics might be affected. So one analogy I use when I'm coaching is, imagine we have this boulder and we want to make it into a sphere, or you could pick any shape, but we're going to make it into a sphere. So we stand on one side of the boulder and we get it kind of round, or then we go to this other side and we get it kind of round. And then we got to go over here and we got to fix it. You can't just start on one side and work your way around the boulder and expect to get a sphere. If you don't believe that, grab some sandpaper and a rock. You got to go all over. So you got to sand, you got to step back and look at it. You got to sand, step back and look at it. It's the same thing with mechanics. As soon as you mess with this thing over here, then that thing's going to change. You improve the footwork, all of a sudden the shoulders are in a better position. You improve something with the hand, and now the back is staying straight. Stuff like that. So it's constant. And you can look at somebody that's been doing Olympic lifts or pitching or swimming or whatever, and you can look at somebody that's been doing this for 15 years, and you can put them in slow motion. You can look at their mechanics and find mistakes that maybe you would miss with the naked eye, but you'll find lots to work on. The most proficient athlete in the world still needs to improve their mechanics, or still can improve their mechanics. Like if you look at a video of me pitching, I've been pitching. So I met Doug when I was 13. So I've been pitching with the same mechanics for 23 years. And if you look at a pitch of that I throw today, you're going to find 15 things that I could have done better. And if you look at a pitch of one of the kids that I've been working with for a year, 2 years, you're going to pick 15, 20 things out that could be better. So it's constant. No matter how good we become, it's never perfect. So it's constant work. And that keeps you honest, that keeps you disciplined. And I think it gives you a reason to keep going.
You know, that's one of the things that I explain to my athletes, Leslie, is that when it comes to Olympic lifting and powerlifting, this is a lifelong learning progression, because there's always going to be things to work on based on your limitations at the time. You could have you could be lacking mobility in the shoulders. You could have tightness in the hips. There could be tightness at the ankles. You know, there might be a position if you're recovering from a sports injury. Now our core is a little weaker than it was 9 months ago. So there's always something to work on. You've never really arrived with Olympic lifting. You've never really arrived with powerlifting. But what it's about is always working on form, technique, and what our weaknesses are. It is not about numbers. My goal is to get you to an advanced varsity level and then have you matriculate into college, that by the time you get to college, that strength coach and the head coach is so astounded by the way your form, technique, and movement pattern is. All they have to do is load you with more weight, because they know that they can trust you, because your form and technique is almost impeccable at that point in time.
It's been my experience from coaching. So I've been working with high school and college pitchers and younger pitchers for, 12, 14 years. And it's been my experience that almost everybody goes into their season or goes to their college career and they get a little bit worse. And people never believe me that they need to be prepared for that until it happens. And it always happens. So you get in a situation where you're sent to go do something, but somebody's not watching you closely, or your mechanics are really dialed in, but now you're doing so much work that you're too tired to do it well that often, and you're not working hard enough at the recovery. Or maybe the quality of coaching is different. Everybody has seen that. No one can deny that the quality of coaching can vary from place to place. Any of these skills are so high maintenance. If you take more than a few days off, you're going to lose something. I always recommend max a week off. If you have an injury, of course, then you need to heal first. But when you're down for a couple weeks, when you take that much time off, somebody else is going to pass you up.
If you thought this was going to be some type of run-of-the-mill garden variety podcast show, you're in the wrong place. We're way past dry facts and dry science. What lies behind the Sports Mastery podcast show is my coaching program. My coaching program is designed to help the athlete reach their hopes and dreams, overcome pains and fears, and bust through all barriers and limitations. It doesn't take a PhD to teach confidence. It doesn't take a PhD to teach motivation. Every now and then, it's going to feel like I'm pulling teeth. But what I'm going to share with you is my high-level systems and strategies that I've used with Olympic-level athletes, Division I athletes, and NFL athletes. You can learn more about my high-level systems and strategies at sportsmastery.com/coaching. Get a free 1-hour complimentary consult. Visit that page and fill out the form.